Welcome to the THS Morning Show with Mr. Brenner and Mrs. Keating.
Good morning, Trojans, and welcome to the morning show with Mr. Brenner and Mrs. Keating with today's very special guest, Dr. Kari Wood. We're so excited to have you today, Dr. Wood. Thanks for joining us.
Absolutely.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you. All right, as usual, welcome to this great Wednesday, November 18th, 2020. Please stop, stand, and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now please join me in a moment of silent meditation. Very good. On to you, Mrs. Keating, for the announcements.
Alrighty, the yearbook is still looking for pictures. Remember, let's help them out through this tough time of not being able to be at events to take pictures. A few different specific pictures they're looking for. Hunting photos. If you have photos you like to featured in the hunting spread, send them our way. I'm starting to see those in all of my news feeds. There's some really nice looking deer going on out there. I'd rather you guys kill them in the woods than anybody hit them with their cars. So let's get pictures of those to get them in the yearbook. Number two, pictures of you being awesome at online learning. We know we're getting better at this every day. What does your setup look like? Send a photo. And how are you staying busy? What are you doing? What are you doing that's a cool and interesting thing during virtual learning? Are you working? Are you learning a new hobby? Send that out to the THS yearbook at thsyearbook@troyareasd.org.
I feel like today people might have some sledding photos. It looks like we're getting a little bit of a dusting, maybe an inch or two here.
Yeah, and I think the ground's going to start getting cold enough it's going to start sticking to the grounds now. I think that warm ground theory is going right out the window really quick.
Yeah. Well, we're finally doing it, Mrs. Keating. Mrs. Brenner and I on Saturday are going to get new tires for the truck.
Yes, I think mine are scheduled for Thanksgiving, so it's about that time for all of us, I guess, right? Nobody wants to get stuck in the northern tier with bad tires.
No, not get stuck, not get in accidents. You have to have your good tires on your cars.
Absolutely.
In the news, Athens School District has now joined Troy in a phase of remote learning. They're going remote as well. President Trump recently fired the Department of Homeland Security official in charge of coordinating election security. According to President Trump, Chris Krebs was terminated because he and Trump did not share the same views about the election. Yesterday, the White House communicated that it will pull many of the troops out of Iraq and Afghanistan by January 15th. Approximately 2,500 troops will remain in the country, and the Trump administration aims to have all remaining troops out of Iraq and Afghanistan by springtime. On to you, Mrs. Keating, for sports.
All right. In sports, there's not loads of things going on today, but in Major League Baseball, the Chicago Cubs president of baseball operations, Theo Epstein, stepped down after leading them to a World Series win in 2016 after being in a championship drought for 107 years. So Epstein also helped the Red Sox through this drought, and I know this because Mrs. Keating's a Red Sox fan, in their 2004 championship run after an 85-year drought. So I'm sure that there is someone out there. He was their general manager then. I'm sure there's someone out there in Major League Baseball that's looking to pick up a World Series that I'm sure he'll go quickly, for sure. He says he likes a 10-year window on that job, and next it would have been 10 years coming up. So interesting. And then another favorite time of the year for me is NCAA March Madness for the Division I men's basketball tournament. And they actually put out a proposal in the past few days of playing the basketball tournament in one spot in Indianapolis, as opposed to playing in 4 or 5 different places and then bringing it all to one for the Final Four. So they're working on for health and safety measures for everybody staying in the same place and testing. So it's safe, similar to the way that they did NBA with the bubble. So I think that's pretty interesting as things come about. We may never need these things again, but maybe they'll, just like we're finding some more convenient things, maybe they will also. All right, on to you, Mr. Brenner, for this day in history.
This day in history, in 1912, there was a cholera outbreak in Constantinople in the Ottoman Empire. In 1921, New York City considered varying work hours to avoid long traffic jams. In 1928, Mickey Mouse makes his first film debut in Steamboat Willie, the very first animated motion picture. In 1968, the Soviets recovered the Zond 6 spacecraft after a flight around the moon. And in 1993, 21 political parties approve a new constitution for South Africa that expands voter rights and ends the rule of the country's white minority. That's all for this day in history. On to you for the weather.
And we already talked about how there's snow on the ground again this morning. Not exactly affecting travel yet today, but today there's only going to be a high of 39 degrees. It's dropping every day. A flurry is expected in the morning, but otherwise later this afternoon, partly sunny, breezy and cold. And tonight we'll see a low of 22 degrees. I have to say that's one big difference between being home right now, which I'm back to reality on Friday, back to the northern tier, but there's a good 10 degrees difference between where I live and the northern tier. So you definitely feel it as soon as I could leave my house in the morning and get there in the morning and be like, oh my goodness. So I have to be prepared in clothing layers always. You never quite know. This time of the year, cold is cold though. So
It is. It's starting to really feel like we're getting into winter. I'm not sure if I'm a fan, but it's coming whether we want it or not. So
absolutely, for a lot of months. Pennsylvania gets hit for a lot of months with those winter weather.
We do.
All right. How about for a COVID-19 update?
Secretary of Health, Dr. Rachel Levine, advised individuals who leave the state to receive a negative COVID test before returning or to quarantine for 14 days. This does not apply to individuals traveling for work. Pennsylvania is now requiring mask wearing outdoors when 6-foot social distancing is not possible. The FDA recently approved the first home COVID test kit yesterday. Also yesterday, 36 new COVID cases were reported in the county. 162,000 were reported in the United States. Bradford County is now ranked 7th in positive tests, and that's 11.7% of tests are testing positive. And if any of that information is inaccurate, we're very lucky because now we have Dr. Kari Wood, our special guest, to join us today. Dr. Wood, welcome to the show. Are you there?
I'm here. How are you?
Hello, welcome. We're so happy to have you.
Wonderful.
So, did I say anything wrong during the COVID update?
No, actually, you informed me of one because I was unaware that we had a home testing one coming out. So that would make my life a lot easier.
It's exciting.
This morning.
I get up every morning and I check the news, and that was one of the exciting things in the news this morning. So Mrs. Keating and I were just talking about our own personal COVID testing experiences, and she's had the one where they shove it way up there, and then I've had the one where they just do the little swirl in the nostril. And
yes, I've had both of those, and then I've had a throat one. The one up the nose, I swear I tasted blood for like an hour. It was awful.
Yeah, I said I'm pretty positive that they had to have swabbed part of my brain. I'm pretty positive, but I'd rather.
I'm glad that Guthrie has gotten away from those because those are evil.
I'd much rather know that they were where they needed to be to make sure that there's a test result there, but do it right the first time because I don't want that again. Ooh.
Yeah. And I knew the lady who was doing my swab. I may have had some inappropriate language at her when we were done.
I was gonna say, I hope she liked you. I hope.
Yeah, she did, but it didn't matter. She still was reaching for my brain through my nose.
So, Dr. Wood, you're actually a Troy graduate from 1996, correct?
I am. I'm getting old.
How have things changed in Troy since 1996 when you graduated?
Well, so the biggest one was when they remodeled the high school. So interestingly enough, my mom was in high school when they built the high school. So she was one of them that did the half days up at the middle school until the high school was done. And then after I left, I got to go through the new remodeling. So what you now have 2 layers where my library was. I think you have like science rooms on the top. Up in that little, I think you guys call it the horseshoe. Mm-hmm. That was all library, very tall library. That's the biggest one. And then the addition of the auditorium, things like that. As for teachers, I have to laugh because I think Mr. Butters is the only one left from my era. Because let's see, Mr. Harold was a student teacher when I was there, and he retired last year. And Mrs. Mondock was a teacher when I was there, and she retired last year. So I think we're down to just Mr. Butters.
Yes, well, and we're happy and excited we have Mr. Butters with us in our building this year. we were trying to get Mr. Harold to be a guest on the show, but he was out hunting whitetails. So
Yeah.
we'll try to snag him soon, but he wasn't available recently. But we'll get him on someday. So then after you graduated, you went to Wilkes University, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Graduated there in 2000. I graduated as a biology major, but I graduated with the first graduating class of pharmacy. Their School of Pharmacy had opened when I was there. So our graduation was very big. So it was fun. But yeah, I did biology. I did my research projects. Actually, I did some cell research, medicine type stuff. But then I decided I wanted to get outside, and I did a lot of research with squirrels and their gathering and things like that with Dr. Michael Steele. He's actually been published in I found an article from him in National Geographic Kids the one day. It was really cool. So.
Well, I graduated from King's right down the road, and my masters are from Wilkes. So
See, there you go.
I'm from right near there, so that's my that's my old stomping ground as well, and at the same time. So we could have been in the same place and didn't even.
Could have. Well, I did classes, a couple classes down at King's for my medical examinations and stuff. I did
a lot of crossover. It's nice.
Yeah, it does.
And then it looks like you went to med school for about 4 years.
Yeah, so I was one of those. I was a little bit OCD in school, go figure. I knew I wanted to be a doctor by about 7th grade. So there was no breaks. I went right from one to the next. I went down to Hershey. I had applied to a couple other schools and gotten in, but they were city schools. And Hershey, I could see cows from the med center, so it was more like home. Now, granted, they all had Hershey hearts, so they had artificial hearts in them because they were actually owned by the med center. But it was very nice. And I've been back down there since, and the area has grown up so much, I barely recognize, where my apartment was and things like that. But that was fun. During med school, we actually did rotations at various locations. So I did medicine down at Lehigh. I did a OB rotation in Reading. I was actually supposed to go out to Cleveland, but that coincided with my wedding, so that didn't work so well. I traded up to York for that, so I was at least in the state. So we got nice exposure down there. We got to go around to multiple different medical centers for education.
Yes. Okay, and then you did residency in 2007. Is that where you kind of really get into the nitty gritty and you get to start doing a little bit of practicing of medicine?
Yeah, so 2004 you earned the MD. 2007 you earned the title attending. So for those 3 years in between, you're a resident, which depending on what year resident depends on what kind of grunt work you get to do. But long hours for 3 years. Down in Williamsport, we had a fantastic program. We were pretty much a big family. So that made it a little easier, but we were limited to 80 hours a week. We were the first class limited to that. I can't say we actually stuck to that. I think I was averaging about 120 hours a week in the building. So residency tends to be when you get beat up and then you become an attending and life becomes good again. Because then I came up here and I've been here since.
Oh my gosh. So like a normal work week is 40 hours. So you're doing like squeezing 3 work weeks into 1 work week of 120 hours.
Yeah, because when we do call, or if you're on the night float, you're in the building. So now if I do call, it's a telephone call. I might get called at 2 a.m. I might not get called all week. But down there, you're in the building. So, go catch a baby, go see somebody on the floor that's crashing, the nurse just wants to talk to me at 2 a.m, those types of things.
How do you keep going? Does adrenaline keep you going? So by the time you're done with your shift, you're still able to work?
Yeah, well, that's a good question, because about that time is when I could start falling asleep talking to my husband when I got home. So, but ironically, I'm not a coffee drinker. I've never been a coffee drinker. Now I do drink tea now, but I got through all of that without coffee. So there's a lot of adrenaline, especially the obstetrics part. Delivering babies was one of my favorite things to do. But there's a lot of adrenaline involved in that.
Wow. I can't imagine doing that without coffee. I can't imagine doing my job without coffee. And
Dr. Wood, I caught a glimpse of your
My tea.
teacup. That looks like a medical, like a heart or something?
Yeah, one of my patients made me that. It says, Dr. Wood, so thankful to have you in our lives.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah. So cute little things that people give me like that, I definitely keep in the building so people can see them.
Cool.
Nice. Oh, that's great.
So just for some of our viewers and especially our students, tell us about some of the exciting things about your profession. What are maybe some exciting things you've experienced, or a story that you can recount, or just something that our students might be interested to know a little bit about?
Well, everybody thinks of family medicine, which is what I do, as sniffles and earaches, and it's not. I've walked into a room and had somebody look kind of nervous and listen to them, and their heart's beating at about 180 beats a minute. That's not normal. I've had to intubate a baby that was born and had already moved its bowels, so it had meconium in its lungs. So those are those adrenaline pumping, oh my goodness, I'm going to pee my pants kind of moments. But then there's the just really wonderful moments, the thank yous from the patient. I'm also the medical director down to Martha Lloyd. And those residents, they can be so absolutely loving because they're so appreciative. I think handing babies to people was one of my favorite, but obviously with a freshman and a sixth grader, the schedule was getting a little bit too much for me. So I did have to give that up a few years ago. But now, my fun is standing on the sidelines on a Friday night. I like doing that. I watch these kids grow up from Pee Wee football. That's fun. There's lots of fun things in my job. Every job has its quirks, and downfalls, like paperwork and stuff like that, but I love it.
Yeah, I suppose the delivering babies can't really be set on a schedule. They oftentimes probably come when they come, huh?
No, I delivered babies for about 11 years, and I wasn't part of a call group. So I was on call 24/7 for a holiday, or if I left, I would call one of the OBs up in Sayre and ask them to please cover me. And if they were nice enough to do that, I could escape. But yeah, for 11 years, everybody had my private phone number. I was a little stressful.
It must be so rewarding to be back where everything started, where you grew up.
It is actually, and I think all the high schoolers can kind of relate. You just can't wait to get out of here. I got to get out of this small town. I got to get out of it. Well, I went down the state. I kept going down the state. I went to the cities for rotations and stuff like that. And when it was all said and done, my husband said, "So where do you want to live when we're all done?" And I said, "Small town Pennsylvania." He goes, "Well, can we go home?" My parents were here. His parents were here. We wanted to start a family. Absolutely. And I don't regret it one bit. I know the social history behind a lot of my patients because I've known them most of my life. It's a little awkward being, some of my patients I taught me, or I've grew up with them, but normally they get over that real quick.
That's great. That's great.
So you've been successful in your career. I think one of the things that our students might want to know a little bit about is, how do you set and achieve your own personal goals?
So I think I mentioned a little bit ago, I'm a little OCD. I tend to set goals, and those are there, and I will do them. I think one of the biggest bits of advice I would give is don't procrastinate, something that I'm having a very hard time getting my 14-year-old to understand. So, if work piles up, then you just absolutely don't want to do it, versus if a little comes in, get it done. Just get it done, and find joy in your job. If I had to come to work and absolutely hated my job, I would never be here. So find joy in your job. I gave a speech, probably a decade ago. Oh my God, that's a long time ago. So I gave a speech to the high schoolers many years ago about being successful. And the big one is you have to set goals. I don't care if your goal is, I am going to get my diploma, or I'm going to get through tech school or med school or what have you. You have to have the goals there. And then you do your absolute best to get there. And yes, there are downfalls. I remember sitting at med school, almost everybody in the class failed this one exam because they covered all of my biochemistry 1 and 2 from college in 4 weeks in med school. And we all failed it. And I remember sitting in the counselor's office going, I'm going to make a good doctor. I know I'm going to make a good doctor, but I failed a test. I've never done that before. There's going to be downfalls. You're going to have hurdles to climb and, struggle to get over, but you'll get over them.
Absolutely.
I like how you say you set goals and you set goals and you accomplish them instead of you just work towards them. You you're going to do it. And when you know you can. That's one of my favorite things to say.
Yeah.
I like.
And so that also comes back to set realistic goals. Mm-hmm. I'm the first one to go to college in my family. And so for me to say in 7th grade I was going to be a doctor, my family's like, okay. But I did it. That's what I was going to do.
That's really cool. I would like to know a little bit more about your role as a district physician. And I know a couple of times a year you're at the football games, you have to run out on the field for some emergencies and help out a little bit, provide a little bit of guidance. Tell us a little bit about that. And I know your role this year is a little different because you're helping with some advice with COVID and things like that. So.
Yeah, so traditionally it's the home football games for both Troy and Canton, because I'm the district doc for both. We do all of the sports physicals. Typically they do those in June, July. This year they got later in the summer, but we do all those, and I take one of my PAs and my nurse practitioners with me, and we get through 100 of them in a day. We stand on the sidelines of football games, which I work very closely with Western Alliance Ambulance, who happens to work both of those sets of games too. So, we've done drills outside of how to get the equipment off. I've done a couple different CME courses specifically for sports medicine injuries. Football tends to be the biggest one, obviously. And then I do the fun things too. I do the kindergarten physicals. I just did those a couple weeks ago. I do the middle school physicals. It's a nice way to get out of the office, because, anybody in an office will tell you being in an office all day long, it's really boring. I don't care how many people you see. So getting out of the building is lots of fun. And as you said, this year I've actually worked very closely with Dr. Stair and Dr. Briggs down in Canton about the policies that were made and advice on, all right, do we shut down? Do we, close the classes? And that's been kind of stressful, but in a good way. I feel like I'm really giving back to my community. I'm actually hopefully having some positive effect locally for that. So I've enjoyed that.
So tell us, what's the worst athletics injury you've experienced?
That was a home game over in Canton, and it was the other team, so I can't remember what team it was, but when you run out on the field and the bottom part of the leg comes up, and then it comes over here, and then it comes up, and something's poking out of skin here.
Oh no.
That pretty much makes me a little queasy, and I have to compose myself. And then I go, ambulance, please come here and get him off this field. That was probably the worst. Some of the scariest are obviously the head injuries. We've had to cut equipment off, and I can't say enough about Bill. I've worked with Bill for several years now. We work well together. Somebody take the head and everybody else do all their stuff.
Yes, we love Bill. Bill's a great athletic trainer. We're all lucky to have him around. So
very much so.
Shout out to Bill and Pivot Physical Therapy.
Taking care of our kiddos, absolutely. I have a question. My husband was the head football coach for a really long time, so I've interacted with a lot of team doctors and trainers. And the difference for you is you have a son out there.
I do.
So how is that? And it's obviously, as he's getting older, it's going to evolve.
It is going to evolve, because I'm going to have to give up something so that I can get to all the games instead of just the home games. So far, as he's come through the juniors and things like that, I sit in the stands and I hold my breath and wait for somebody to stand up. But I've gotten called down on that field a few times, and these kids I've known since kindergarten. So you get a little bit more emotionally attached, but like I said, having done this now I've been with Guthrie and been doing this for 13 years. So all the kids that are there, I've seen grow up. So a lot of them I know, but yeah, with my son, I'm probably harder on him, get up and shake it off kind of a person. Whereas the other ones, I'm like, are you okay? But I think it's good to have that perspective, because then when the parent comes barreling down the grandstand at you, you know what's going through their head. You know what you need to say to calm them down so that we can get a good history, get the patient where he needs to go, and things like that. And I think that's I like to put myself in the patient or the family's shoes as much as possible, both as for schools as well as here in my office, because that empathy, that understanding, trying to understand what they're feeling is imperative to my position.
Yes. Thank you. So your family is a little bit involved in 4-H. I was a former 4-H member myself, so I think that's really cool. Your family does some things with rabbits, correct?
Yep. We do archery, and we raise 2 different breeds of rabbits. We raise Holland Lops, which are the cute little fluffy, floppy-eared ones, and then Japanese Harlequins, they look like a Halloween cat, so the orange and black or orange and gray. Yeah, so we have a barn of 12, 13 rabbits right now. And when we breed them, then we end up with like 25 rabbits, which is, I love them. They're adorable. They're a little violent sometimes, but
Really?
yeah, I angered one. I scared it when I went to pick him up, and he turned around and got me. But you get that with any animal, except for they're little, and you're like, oh, they're so cute and fluffy.
Were you a 4-H member when you were growing up?
Yep. So some of my most fond memories are camp. So if you see the paintings behind me, I tend to volunteer down at the camp each year, and I teach painting when I'm down there. So we do these, the kids and I have done all of these. These are all my paintings that I do with them. And then I've also do a workshop with them called Fizz, Pop, and Build, which is essentially a STEM class. So I'm actually doing one of those for our Leroy group this coming weekend. We're going to build marker bots that draw on the paper, which is fun. We're going to do that on Zoom, so we'll see how that goes. I did painting this summer because camp was at home, so I did painting, and I had rigged my phone up so it was looking down at my counter, and I was talking to them above me while I was painting, and we taped it, and it went well. We're learning all kinds of fun things with technology, let me tell you.
Yeah, I love your Northern Lights photo. That's beautiful. Your Northern Lights painting.
Yeah, we've got the camp, obviously, and the campfire, little fox. I had a local, actually Alexis Bastion is, what is she, junior? Something. Her dad nicely cut me some wood so I could do little foxes. And
oh, cool.
Nice.
Okay, well, let's move on to our COVID section of this. Just some information about COVID that our viewers and students might like to know a little bit. Can you just start by telling us something we might not know about how the COVID virus itself works?
You mean like the pathophysiology?
Just like, how does the virus work? You know, what are some things that viewers might need?
So the virus, the way almost any virus works is once you're exposed to it and it gets into your system, it will recognize different cells in the system, and it'll attach to them. And then viruses are nasty little beings because they inject their DNA into those cells, and they use the mechanics in that cell to replicate their own DNA. And so here you've got this cell that's just, hanging out. All of a sudden it gets injected with this other stuff. It doesn't know that it's not supposed to do something with it, so it starts replicating it. So then your own body is not helping you because it's making more of the virus. But as it does that, it destroys those cells. And that's with any virus. And it's a matter of how quickly they replicate and how easily they're transmitted. Unfortunately, this one, with the normal influenza virus, one person can infect 1 to 2 people. With this one, it's a little more contagious. So you're talking 3 to 4 people per person that's infected, which is why it spreads so ridiculously fast. Regardless of flattening the curve, it still took over. And now unfortunately, we do everything we can, hand washing and masks and good hand hygiene and things, and we wait. We still don't have we have no cure for it. One interesting fact about the COVID virus, so coronaviruses is a whole family of viruses. One of the most common ones that you and I know is the common cold. So if you think about, do we have a treatment for the common cold? No. Do we have a vaccine for the common cold? No. Do we have a cure for the common cold? No, and that's been around how many years? So this COVID-19 is scary in that respect, because this virus likes to change. It'll mutate as it, goes from person to person. It'll mutate just a little bit. So I have fellow residents from residency that, work the ICUs, and they've seen perfectly healthy 40-year-old, men and women that now have 3 stents in their heart because it decided to attack the heart. And then I have some that literally lose their taste and smell for 4 days, and that's it. Everybody's immune system is different, so it makes it kind of hard.
Yeah. If you had to sort of prioritize the preventative measures like mask wearing and social distancing and hand washing, what are the most important and most effective in your thoughts?
So obviously hand washing is number 1 in my book, no matter where I am. But especially as we're coming onto the holiday season, I'm going to be that party pooper and say social distancing is huge. I did attend one wedding. I was nervous the whole time while we were there. And then you read all these stories that 45 people at this wedding got it. So as I had the conversation yesterday with one of my patients, she wants to have her mom's Thanksgiving. Her mom's 91. She wants to have the Thanksgiving dinner like she's had every year for 91 years. And I said, she goes, she might not be here next year. I said, you have that dinner. She might not be here at Christmas. Mm. And that, I had a patient, literally her dad contracted it on the 26th of October, and she had to go have the ventilators turned off last week. We don't know who it's going to affect like that. And that's the scary part. So definitely social distancing. So we will be having a dinner for 4 at my house for Thanksgiving.
I have a question for you that's probably at the forefront. I think Bradford County is a really good example of this. Numbers and testing were really low in March. And, I think the belief really early on, community-wise.
Everyone was terrified.
Right. Well, I'm not sure that everybody, community-wise, though, not many people followed. They very quickly, if they were following any protocols, community-wise, didn't continue to follow them.
Correct. That was a big issue.
Yeah. So in school, we were able to implement all of the safety measures with our health and safety plan, and the kids did such an awesome job in school. But our battle that we had to fight was when they left our buildings and the community and families weren't following these things. This is probably why we're maybe in the position that we're in now.
It is.
What kind of things can we do for community awareness? I mean, I don't know if there's not a clear-cut answer, I know, but
yeah, there's not a clear cut. I mean, if we could all go back to March 20th, when everyone actually respected the the social distancing. They were all right, we got to make everyone was making masks and everything like that. If we could go back to that level of awareness, that would be helpful, because we all got complacent. Everyone got complacent. And we've got it now where we didn't have it in March. And so now we're fighting a battle of March to November of complacency of now trying to say, well, you got to wear your mask. Well, I gave that up months ago. And I think that's the big thing, is the diligence is gone, and we need to really drive that home. And unfortunately, there's no good way to do that. You can tell all these horror stories of people that have been horribly sick and passed away, but again, you have those who get the sniffles and lose their sense of taste. And so my biggest thing is to think of the other people around you. I think that's the big one, especially for the masks. The masks aren't like me wearing a mask is not protecting me. Me wearing a mask is protecting you. And that's out in the community is the problem. They're like, well, I'm healthy. I can do this. Well, great. But one, like me personally, I take medications that suppress my immune system. I can't be anywhere near it. So you going to the grocery store without your mask is really being kind of a jerk to me.
Great. That's all great advice. And so we wish we could fix it really quickly, but all we can do is educate, and that's what we're here. That's what we're all here to do. And
yeah, Yeah, and so we do lots and lots of testing now. I think actually as of this week now, Troy Hospital, we can do testing 3 days a week too. So not having to send people all over the place. I know the Department of Health had come up, what's today, the 18th? So today's the last day up at the old Kmart parking lot up in Sayre, where they were doing testing. So you know it's bad when the Department of Health sets up a testing booth in your county.
And that was free testing, right, in the Kmart parking lot?
Yes, yep. It was free testing. It's a little challenging for us in healthcare because we don't have those results. They do. So patients call us and they're like, well, we need a note for work. And we're like, I don't have your result. You have to give me a result to see that.
Yeah, so what our county, Bradford, is ranked pretty high in the state right now as far as COVID. Do you think that's just kind of the progression of things because we were low for so long? Or do you think that'll end? Or do you foresee that continuing for us to be particularly high?
Well, fortunately, our population is a lot lower than Philadelphia. So obviously that is going to go down, but at what cost is the question. I think a lot of it is the complacency. It's not really the natural progression of it, because if it was, Tioga County, Sullivan, the other counties around us would be that way. Yeah, I think it was more of a complacency issue.
And it seems as though Troy, I know the manor was a big part of that, but the community spread in Troy was huge.
It was. So the big thing to understand with the manor is they had a total of, I want to say it was like 130. But in the county, we've had like 700, 800. I mean, it's something ridiculous. So they don't even make up half of the county cases. Yes, once it got in there, it went through there like wildfire, and that's why they had worked so hard to keep it out of there. But it did the same thing at elder care, which is up towards Waverly, I think. They got it early and it went through there like wildfire. Unfortunately, it's closed contact, close quarters kind of things. It's like being on a college campus, but tighter, only one dorm.
Now those numbers though of the actual patients get reported back to the counties of residence of those people.
Yeah, but most of them have been at the manor long enough that they're residents of Bradford.
They're residents. Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, especially all the long-termers. And I will say, I've had some patients down there that they were on hospice for lung issues and they lived, they did fine, they got a cold, that was it. And then I've had 2 or 3 that have passed away on my service, that, we couldn't do much for them.
Well, thanks so much. Yeah, thanks so much for sharing this information with us. Any final thoughts that you feel like our viewers and students should know about COVID or anything before we wrap up for the day?
Just please be careful with Thanksgiving and Christmas dinners, please.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Yep.
Thanks, Dr. Wood. So as we wrap up our show today, I just want to thank everybody and remind our students to get to work, log in, and get some good stuff done.
O Trojans, list to our joyous song in praise of the red and white, and honor your alma mater as long as you dare to be true and do right. The good times we've had as the days speed away will hold in memory dear. We'll honor our high school forever and day. For our dear THS we will cheer.
Have a nice day, everyone. Thank you.
Have a great day.